Are you a member of a club? Nah, me neither. I guess maybe I've joined what they call a fitness club at various points, but I just used it to work out. I mean more like a country club or a club where they play golf and socialize. Are those the same thing? I have preconceived notions that clubs are for fancy people, not for me. But maybe that's about to change? Welcome to Zeitgeist Radio, where we learn about musical subcultures from people in the scene. I'm Morgan Rowe, and today I'm speaking with a retired marketing professional who is devoting his newfound free time to building a club, but for musicians. Color me interested. If you love this content, be sure to subscribe on your podcast platform. Now, let's get into the interview. My guest today is John Avilla, a bassist and co-founder and CEO of Sound Union in Redwood City, California. John, welcome to Zeitgeist Radio.
Thank you, Morgan. It's good to be here. And I enjoy the opportunity to talk about music with people who love music.
I mean, it's the best. It's the best. So I'd love to hear in your words, who are you musically?
Who am I musically? I'm in a spot right now where I am kind of living a little bit of my music dream. I was a professional in marketing and advertising, had a career in Silicon Valley for a long time, and always played music on the side. And now I get to play music at least a few times a week. I have a club here. The Sound Union is like we call it like a health club for musicians, right? So our members pay a monthly fee to come in, and we have everything they need: instruments, studios, amps. Everything's all set up. It's people come in, they hang out, they play, they have a good time. We have a club bar and even a performance space. And actually, one thing I didn't count on in the business plan is that I don't get to play as often as I really want to.
Oh, no.
A lot of players come in. Sometimes the bartender doesn't get a drink,
Right.
But I really enjoy seeing members come in and connect through music. And we are building just a really fun community. So that's what I get to do when I come to work every day is work on establishing our location here in Redwood City. And we're already starting to talk about branching out to other locations in California.
Oh, that's exciting. Good. How long have you been playing?
So I grew up in a pretty musical family. We had a large number of kids in a good old Catholic family here in California. So I started playing probably fifth, sixth grade. And I just picked up the bass. My older brother handed me one. He knew how to play it, and he showed me.
Nice.
And that set me off on playing the bass. I was also in band and orchestra as a percussionist. So I've got that rhythm section stuff. And that has just been a part of my life since junior high, through high school, through college. We had great programs in junior high and high school in my high school or my area, and really outstanding band directors that were nationally recognized. We were competitive nationally. And after college, and I played in college with a jazz band. And then after that, kind of got into being a dad and, started to work, got married, started to have kids. Music kind of took a little bit of a backseat for a few years. But as soon as the kids start going to school, you meet other parents who play, you form that mom and dad's band, and become the school band. And that kind of reignited my involvement and passion in music as a side hustle. So
and you're stuck with bass, or do you ever play percussion still?
Oh, I'll play percussion. It's one of the unique things, like especially at this club. If there's a bassist in the room, of course my members take priority, so I'll pick up percussion and we'll play percussion. And I also sing. I sing lead and backup. So there's always something fun to do in the room.
Nice.
But musically, it's just always been there, except for that little bit of respite. And I've always found it to be this re-energizing exercise. It is pretty addictive, right? And it's fun when you play with people you like. And I had a pretty high pressure job, so you'd be cranking at work, and even in a creative industry like I was in, I was a creative director. You still can do creative things to recharge your batteries and take new perspective. And boy, you form the best lifelong relationships with people. I have people now I've played with for 25 plus years that are my musical brothers and sisters, and there's a bond there, right? That you
Yeah.
just don't get. I mean, maybe you get it playing golf. I don't know. I don't play golf, but I'm sure there are other ways.
There's
But I
not that
really love people.
co-creation, but I don't know. I don't play
Yeah,
golf either.
exactly. That co-creative process. Yeah, there's something magical happens.
Yeah. Awesome. So tell me, before we get too into what Sound Union is now, I'd love to hear what were the early days like when it was just like you were having this thought in the back of your head. There was no name, there was no, you're just like, there's something here,
Yeah.
kind of an itch you're scratching. What thoughts and experiences were you having about connection and people connecting through music?
Yeah, great. I would say there are maybe a few prongs to that. So around 2015, um, uh, I was in I mean, I've been in marketing. I was working at a company called GoPro, and started to have to lay off some people as we shrunk, and then I got the axe, and in that process, music was kind of a it helped me kind of deal with the pressure. You build a team, and then you have to start thinning the team out. That's no fun. So I started thinking about, okay, life in marketing comes and goes, and I'm sure in your audience you've got people who are in that field, and very few marketing folks stay in the same spot for like 8 years, 9 years, 10 years. It's a 2.5, 3 year cycle, and um, I was like, well, I don't want to get back into that cycle. I had a pretty stable run, and while I was doing other work and doing contracting and getting other jobs for the next 2 or 3 years, I was like, I have to do this another 15 years. It's going to be a grind. And the marketing industry is changing super rapidly. Even now, I mean, look in the last few years with AI, I was I was creative director, so I had words and visuals on, team in a team. And I knew that it was changing. So I started to think about what do I want to do for my last act. Um, and and I learned early on in my career, that's how I got into advertising and marketing is, what do I like to do? What am I good at? I'm good at writing, good at communicating, good at talking and brainstorming. Uh, and actually, ironically, now that you asked me this, I didn't tie this back until just now, but I got into advertising and marketing because of music. I thought that's a profession that feels like jazz. You're in a room, you're brainstorming, you're throwing ideas. There's a lot of, improvisation, especially early in concepting. So now I'm back into music because of that, right? And I liked that aspect. So then I started thinking about what kind of music business could I create simultaneously being in a band and a pretty good one. We were a really nice wedding band, dance band, had regular gigs, super fun. Um, and the band was full of accomplished, not only musicians, but these were people who had great day jobs. I would say they were rock stars at work, and then we'd go and do music, and we were in dingy garages that were too cold in the winter, too hot in the summer. Rats in the corners, and your rehearsal warehouses that just don't fit the bill for looking around and going, there's probably a better way to do this. So those were kind of the key things that started to go in my head. All right, maybe there is a business here. There's all kinds of clubs, right? And I didn't see a music club that I wanted to create. And I happened to be reading the biography about Steve Jobs, and got to funny how things time in your life. You get As I'm thinking through this, I get to the page where it's like basically the message is build what you want, and start there. So then it all just snowballed, and I started to formulate the real plan of trying to create a club that is for people who like to play music in their spare time and want to connect with others. And here we are, almost 10 years later, 8 years later. Yeah,
Yeah.
it takes a while.
Yeah, well, congratulations. It is 10, this is we're recording in 2025, so that's
Yeah.
10 years from the initial idea.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. What were the early days like when okay, so you've had this idea, you've said, I'm going to do a club, then what?
Yeah. So it's a lot of non-work hours, right? I mean, you're still working,
Yep.
and formulating the business plan as a marketing pro. I took a little bit of pride in wanting to do really good market research, understand who my target audience, not assume that everyone is going to be motivated by the same things I am. So it takes a lot of weekends and evenings. So I would say that took about 2 years to really start to coalesce the plan and talk to some of my friends. My best One of my best friends who became my business partner. He and I have worked together for 20 years in different companies. When I ran the idea past Tom, and he said, "Yeah, I think that's a good idea." And he's not a musician, but he got it, and he has musicians in his family. We started to. I did a lot of independent, then pulled Tom in 2021. Finally incorporated. Then started to raise money because we need some capital to launch this. But the early days were up and down. I mean, I'll be honest. You're cranking. You run out of energy. You think you're right. You keep doing research and you learn new things that challenge your preconceptions. One super fortunate thing that happened to me as I talked to people about this in my circle, one of my friends said, "Hey, I've got a buddy um, who has a place that sounds just like what you're talking about. It's his own man cave, little 1,500 square foot space. He's a super talented, super creative landscape designer, and he had a really cool little bar area, built a room with instruments in it. Um, I mean, he's just a brilliant designer. So it was a very cool spot. It's still a very cool spot, fire pit and, games and things like that. Uh, and he became an immediate friend when we started playing music together and talking about it. This is what happens with music. And basically said, "Hey, if you want to do any market research and bring people in, bring them to let's bring them into the studio." So up until COVID, for about a year before COVID hit, we ran sessions every month or so. So I would find people and use my network to bring in other people and run sessions and feel like, how do these things work and what do people want in a space? And I was lucky that Brian's space was just outfitted beautifully, and very, very much what I had in mind to create. So we were very parallel. COVID hit, that put things on quite a bit of, a very big hold. And I was working full time as a VP of marketing, with challenges and COVID and how do you keep a team alive and keep a team integrated and all of that. So we did that through COVID. And then as we came out of COVID, maybe, let's see, what was it? Maybe, like I said, about 2020, um, the company that I was working for got bought by by another company in St. Louis. So we all got downsized, handed our parachutes, and got out. And then I started working full time in late 2020. By 2021, in May, we incorporated, and then went to town starting to raise money. And it took us a couple of years to bring the money together and find a space.
Nice. Wow, it's quite the journey.
Yeah, sorry, it's a
I really
longer
appreciate
answer.
you getting into the weeds with that kind of the more like grindy stuff because I think a lot of it can just seem so shiny, but it's just like music. I'm classically trained and piano player and vocalist,
Oh,
and so
fantastic.
you get you perform, you get the shiny part, but like all of the hours and hours and hours in the practice room, all those hours at the piano, working on the same thing. What if I do it this way? What if I phrase it this way? What if I do it that way? It's the parallels with business and music right there. You were
Yeah, and
hard at work in the practice room.
it's all that mixed in with the startup journey, right?
Yep.
And we hear startup entrepreneurs like to talk about, oh, I got to here, but it really is up and down. I mean, there
Mm-hmm.
are times you think, how is this going to work? And perseverance is one of my strong suits in a good way. And well, maybe some people would say it's not a strong suit. But you just gotta, if you believe what you're doing,
Yeah.
you look for and get those tells that say, yeah, this is really something people want. You just gotta keep figuring out how to shape it. Um, I mean, that's what it takes to start any business, I think.
Mm-hmm.
From big high tech to an ice cream store, it's the same kind of a thing, I think.
Yeah. Did you find that coming out of COVID, um, people like I started this podcast during COVID as a way to connect with my musician friends. Did you
Yeah.
find that people were that had their motivation changed from your initial research coming out of COVID?
I think so. That's a really good
Yeah.
question. I When we came out and people could start to gather again, and it took a little while. So imagine you're a musician to sing in a room,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we still were worried about how close do we get when we sing. Horn
Mm-hmm.
players blowing and
Mm-hmm.
having the horn spit and all that stuff. But for the mom and dad's bands who are a big part of my audience, I saw right away an interest. We got right back into my friend Brian's studio. We started doing that at a higher frequency, probably about every 3 weeks. People wanted to get together, and that started to gain momentum, and more people came into that group. So I think it was definitely pent up. People
Yeah.
wanted that human connection. The other thing that I think suffered during isolation and COVID, but then was turbocharged afterwards is there's a real there has been for a little over 10 years, a real trend in what's called, sort of neo-tribalism. People want to find people who
Yeah.
have the same interests and kind of are in the same place, have more in common, right? Um, and that really there was a pent up demand for that with post isolation.
Yeah. I remember as people started performing again, it seemed like every show I went to, the performers at some point started crying
Oh,
because
yeah,
they were like, "Man, I missed this. This is
yeah,
what we do this for."
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah.
And the audience too. I've
Oh
seen
yeah.
with just that there is something very fundamental in our human experience about communicating through music. Um, I think obviously verbal was sort of the next step after probably in our evolution. And I think when you saw that human need, like you talk about starting a podcast, I mean, how many were started during COVID? Because yeah,
Yeah.
that was this easy way to get connected and stay connected with people and have those conversations.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a drive that no matter what we have.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. That's why I started this podcast. That's why I've kept it going.
Yeah.
I did not know you before this before COVID or before I started the podcast, and yet here we are
I mean,
having
stress
a
creates
connecting conversation.
stress, creativity comes from restrictions and
Mm-hmm.
constrictions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, good for you for starting it and hanging in there. I mean, a lot of people ditched them right afterwards. So
Yeah.
good for you.
Thanks. So let's who is Sound Union? Who comes in? Who are these people? You did your market research. You brought people into the studio. Who comes in the door now?
Yeah, another great question. And Sound Union really is the community. I'll just acknowledge that when I thought of the idea, I thought, oh, it's kind of like build it and they will come. But I probably always in my business plan emphasized that great equipment, great space, great environment, yada yada. But it really is the community. I
Yeah.
have everybody from 20 somethings, mid 20s to mid 70s. We have about 40% women in the group or in the community. Um, and they, the one common thread is everybody puts music as a key activity in their life. Not everybody's super accomplished, super wealthy, or anything like that. The economic ranges are from, like I said, 20 somethings just starting out in their careers, busy moms who decide that they can they want to spend a
Mm-hmm.
few hours a month doing music with people. That's their release. And we like
Mm-hmm.
to say around here, self-care is not selfish for
Yeah.
men or women. And uh, it so it's one there's the common thing of it's a priority in their life, and the community is growing to very aware. I think there's this real DNA in the community of like music. It should be a joy, and um, there's not there's always an opportunity to lift somebody up in a music session, or studio session we call them, which are, most people would say, jam sessions, but we kind of structure them a little bit more. There's always somebody you can lift up, and there's always somebody who can lift you up, and if you take those opportunities, we try to cultivate that in the community. This should be a place of joy. It shouldn't be a place of frustration, like I have to get the lick
Mm-hmm.
right, otherwise I'm a failure, kind of a thing. I mean, we do have those people. We have people who are perfectionists, but they're given permission to explore, uh,
Yeah.
and get to whatever level of perfection they want. But we try to encourage people. I mean, we like to say, and promote within the community, that we're not the only place our members play music. A lot of them gig, a lot of them have their own studios at home, but we want to be their favorite place. So what do we do as a staff to create an environment where we're the favorite place to play? Um,
Man, I love that. I've had a lot of guests on here who I've had some pretty incredible raw conversations about perfectionism
mm,
and the how as a musician feel so strongly that you want this to be so amazing and perfect, but we are not perfect. That's
yeah.
a challenge that a lot of people face, and I really love the de-emphasis on that. I think is important and healthy for people.
Yeah, we still make room for it, because there are, you talk about sort of, again, range of people. There are,
Mm-hmm.
you know, all sorts of psychographics that are represented, and we're grateful to have a pretty large membership and still growing. And there are some who that is their motivation for music. Have they want to hit those licks. They want to hit, things perfectly before they can then go on to explore how else, they have to perfect it before they can take it a little bit farther. And I find myself, because while I am a bit of a perfectionist in certain things, I grew up playing jazz. So music to me,
Mm-hmm.
I've played with guys and well, mostly guys who were the ones who were like, dude, play it just like the record exactly every time. And I don't play with those people very long, because it's kind of not fun. There are definitely
Yeah.
limits you have to get. If you're going to play Stevie Wonder's I Wish as a bassist, you better know how to play that part. You can't jazz it up. But there is always room for,
Yeah.
some sweetness, and
I
I
feel
try
like
not to.
bassists, the groove comes above all else. And I feel like a lot of us classical people could really take something from that.
Yeah, that's a very yeah. So there, it's a good contrast, right? I mean, classical, especially in a symphony or a symphonic, setting, as a percussionist or a bassist, yeah, you're definitely playing the part. There's not a
Yeah.
lot. You
You
that's
don't
what you're
improvise.
hired for. Yeah, that's what you're hired for. Cover bands, I
Yeah.
think, are allowed a little bit of should have a little bit of fun, a little bit of latitude. But I do find myself putting a cap on that point of view sometimes, and
Hmm.
going into the acceptance and encouragement mode when I can see them coming in and just working on something to perfect it. And I've come to realize that's one of the ways they do find joy, where
Yeah.
I would find frustration. They actually do find joy in that perfection, and I've learned that, about, not everyone approaches music the exact same way, but they can still get joy and get those endorphins out of it, and so we try to support that and encourage that.
Yeah. This conversation was so interesting because I think in certain circles there's kind of a pride and romanticism in the grunge aspect of playing certain kinds of music. Garage bands are basically an entire genre. But eventually, I would say hopefully, yeah, some of us do end up raising our standards as we get older. Maybe we don't need to couch surf anymore and can get a hotel with a real bed. A moment for me was being able to go to the grocery store and just buy food without that tally running through my head of how much each item is adding to my bill. And also, hello, there's supposedly a loneliness epidemic going on. If I knew there was a place I could walk in the door and have this shared interest with everyone in there, play music with them, talk shop, or even just drink a beer and shoot the breeze, not gonna lie, that sounds appealing. If you're enjoying this conversation, please take a moment to like Zeitgeist Radio on Facebook or Instagram, or if you're really loving it, you can sign up for my newsletter on my website at zeitgeistacademy.com/radio. Now, back to John. Let's shift gears a little. Let's talk about creativity. On your website, you mentioned a relationship between creativity and connection. Can you talk a little bit about how you see that connection between creativity
and community?
And community.
Yeah. And thanks. That's a good question to ask. I think it is also one of our key differentiators. I do feel that since Tom and I come from the advertising industry and enjoyed some success there, you learn to succeed in advertising. I mean, there's the old collaboration thing of yes and, right, where it is collaborative. You got to take people's ideas in and go, okay, how do I build on that? And if there's not quite a way to build on it, then suggest something that goes better, right? And being open to that. And then, as in my career as a creative director, I had a really good mentor early on, who was just a icon in the industry, who told me, look, man, now that you're leading a team, I had a team of about 20 at the time. He said, it's not about your idea. He said, your job is to create an environment where your team can do the best work of their career. So how do you help them do that? That was a piece of business advice that just went straight into my brain and stuck. There are a lot of things that went in that never stuck, but that one stuck. And I really, I think my team would tell you, we were doing that. We tried to do that. So I try to do that here. And that encouragement of creativity, we're all born creative. The creative gets beaten out of us in socialization, in some respects school, but I won't blame school for it. It's the you stop that freedom of expression when you start worrying about what other people are thinking, right? And as you grow up and become part of a community, that becomes a piece of it. So what we try to do is as creatives, and I had a really good career of doing this, is say it doesn't matter, right? Yeah. Explore if you're a writer, you write down the bones. Just write down what you're thinking and then go back and see what works and what doesn't. If you're an art director or a designer, explore and being good at creating space for that and permission to fail, I think is set. That's what we bring here. And I don't know if I had been an accountant or if I had been a medical researcher or something like that. And not to say anything bad about those people, but being in a business where every day you have to figure out how to foster creativity, I think that gave us a foundation that we brought into this musical space that is just built into the walls, built into everything we do, built into our staff. And I think it does make our culture unique. And I think it's going to be part of our success. It's what makes us, that space that people want to come to and explore. And because it's really vulnerable, right? You walk through, even when you have sheet music in front of you, you can't hide the sound you're making, especially when you're singing.
Yep.
And you gotta be good at creating a safe space for that to happen. Whether it's any step in the process, right? From the writing all the way to the performing.
So how do you address when people are, because the fear comes from the judgment of other people.
Yeah.
So you're talking about creativity coming from the other people, but there's also kind of that element of fear because, oh crap, now I'm in front of you and you're
Yeah.
asking me to generate. And what if you don't like it? And what if? How do you address that?
Um, that's a really tough question to answer because you have to address it with physical and social cues. You can say to people, and we do whenever we give tours or people sign up, and in the first session, this is an open arms session. What we do here is just do what you want to do. Do what you can do. Like we have a session every week that's a cover band session. It's not about, again, just being a karaoke version of the thing, but we encourage people to explore. Um, Verbally, we say this here. This is room for exploration, but everybody does. I don't care how long you've played. I walk into a room. I had a session with a new guy who's really an accomplished guitar player, and I went in nervous, going like, "Oh man, am I gonna
Yeah.
think it or what?" And so we all feel that. You could be a really good. I've heard from real professionals. I mean, people on tour, bands we'd recognize, they get nervous, and because now you're, no matter what, you're vulnerable. So we just try to address it by saying, look, we don't care if it's the first time you step up to the mic or the thousandth time you're a musician here, or you pick up a guitar for the first time. And by verbalizing that, I think it does lower the barrier a little bit. And then when you have a room, I mean, we can get 9, 10 people into a session. Our rooms are big enough that you have a few of those people in the room, especially the session leader, encouraging. It just takes a little bit of that. And people see, oh yeah, the water's fine, and I don't have to be perfect, and we can all still have fun. And when you're playing, there's that natural tendency when somebody does something, eyebrows get raised and they go, yeah, it's fun, right? So you
Mhm.
get that immediate reinforcement that is, okay, this is going to be fine.
Yeah. I've run some classes here, the Zeitgeist Academy. Um, and it's funny, a lot of people who are not familiar with musicians, when I've talked to, like, for example, various business communities I've been part of through the years, oh, you work with musicians? Oh, talking about the marketing, what, getting the message out. Oh, well, your ego this, and you'll be this, and you'll be that. And I'm like, you clearly don't know musicians at all, because I think a lot of us have ego, but it's the opposite, where it's like the shadow side of ego,
Yeah.
where we see everyone else as so much like everyone else shining. Like, they're so great, they're so great, they're so great. And we just ignore ourselves and all of that. And it makes it very, I think that's where a lot of the nervousness and the perfectionism come from, is comparing ourselves. The ego is the comparison to others, but it's the opposite. A lot of musicians don't have, some musicians have egos, but I'd say 99% of the type of people that you're talking about, and people who, even people who make money and are professionals, I would still say there's a kind of this shadow side where they're afraid to shine because they
I
don't
mean,
feel like they can.
yeah, I mean, you can be Adele, right? She's famous,
Yeah. Oh,
got stage fright. And
yeah.
it's like, are
Because
you
no matter
kidding?
how, I think the more you play, not even the better you get, just the more you play, the more you see what other people are doing, and there's just so many amazing people out there, and it's hard to think maybe I'm one of those too.
Yeah, it is. We don't want to, right? We kind of
Yeah.
want to feel that way. And I think, and I don't know if I wouldn't say there's a general psychographic of a musician,
Right.
but um, you're right. There are very few front people. Band
Yeah.
can't have more than one front. An orchestra
It
can't
doesn't
have
work.
more than one conductor, right?
Right.
So the social structure that comes with being a musician, kind of fosters a little bit the collaboration, but it also, like I said, if it's, you're creating relationships through music, and you're vulnerable, and you can easily look over somebody else and go, oh my god, they were I mean, I was in a session the other night with a new member who jumped in and was playing bass so much better than me, and I'm so jealous. I'm like, not in a bad way. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna steal that lick. She was awesome, and then she jumped over on guitar, and it's like, do you want to get up to the mic and sing? She goes, no, I don't sing. I'm like, all right, at least you don't sing. Everything else, all keys, bass, drums, or keys, bass, and guitar. Um, but I mean, there is the front person ego, right?
Yeah.
And and no matter what, I think sometimes people under pressure, that's when a little bit of diva comes out.
Hmm.
And I don't mean that in a derogatory or bad way, but the nervousness
Yeah. I'm
about
a
it. I
soprano. I love me a good diva.
need a certain way, or I need this or that. I need,
But that can also be just an act. You can be feeling,
I think it's a manifestation of nervousness, if you
I
ask me.
think so. And in some industries, it's required, like to be successful. Like in the opera world, if you're not a diva, you get looked over.
Oh yeah, yeah. Same thing. Pick any business. I'll go back
Yeah.
to advertising. Yeah,
Oh, sure.
the super successful people that I knew in advertising they were front people. They were like, if you want to draw a parallel to a band, they were the band, and you know get
Do you think
successful.
they actually were, or do you think they developed a face for it? I'm always curious. I think some
Uh,
people maybe are like that, but I think some people may have a face that they put on over
I
top of.
It might be there might be multiple cases. There might be those who armor, that's the armor they put on.
Yeah.
And there are those, I know certainly, that became successful when they started acting that way.
Yeah.
So it was like,
They're
oh,
loud, they're shiny.
they're loud,
They
shiny.
get
It
attention.
reinforced their personality, their personality traits that worked, that were sociable, that were, and then get elevated. So yeah, that kind of is a self-feeding, feedback loop.
Do you think there's people who are like that outside and then in Sound Union they can relax and let that face off?
Well, most of the time I only see them inside.
Yeah.
Union. Those that I do know inside and out, what is that from Severance? The innies and the outies are pretty much
Right,
the
exactly.
same.
Yeah.
They're pretty much the same. I mean, I do have, high level CEOs, business owners that come in here to escape. And in talking with them, I know you've got 200 people at work that need something from you. You have your family at home that deservedly needs and wants something from you, and they come here with none of that, and they can just like let the pressure off, play guitar or piano or sing or whatever, have a bourbon, have a soda, whatever. And I think maybe it's not a different personality, but it's just a little bit of taking off the armor, probably. Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any particular stories of your years with your community that you found inspiring?
There's two that I love to tell. One is um, the magic that happens when you bring strangers into a room and play music, and 3 hours later, everybody's hugging goodbye. Literally, this happens all the time, multiple times a week. Um, where else can we get that? Where in 3 hours you make a connection that's healthy, that's reinforcing, that's has all these great other social and psychological benefits that you go, when are we going to do this again? And that is also one of those things that completely removes those barriers of phone. Right? Okay, the water's fine. That happens all the time. Another one, and then maybe this ties in a little bit of like the culture that is growing up around here. One of our first showcases, we put on at least every quarter, if not a little more frequently. Mother's Day, Father's Day, New Year's, holidays, Valentine's, concerts, and one of our first ones we had on stage, guy who plays jazz guitar for 40 plus years, but an absolute virtuoso, sweetheart of a man. We had a drummer who is a music producer, super accomplished, Grammy nominated, writes for TV and movies and video games, but loves to play. That's how he recharges. Um, and various other players. And then we had vocalists, someone who'd been singing for 30 years and two others who had never sung in public before, ever. And nobody on the stage was like, oh, I don't play with those people. They weren't, there was none of that. It was just like, yes, let's elevate and have fun. And it was a blast. And I don't know where else that can happen, again.
Yeah.
And kind of create a community that accepts people, like I said, from the first time you pick up an instrument to the millionth time.
So in these showcases, in the studio sessions, let's talk about genre. How do you choose what you're going to play? And what if it's a jazz jam and I come in as a rock guitarist? What happens to me?
Yeah. That's something we had to learn. It's a little bit of our not so secret sauce, but I don't mind sharing that we learned early on to identify and structure. That's why we call them sessions, not jams. So we have country, we have heavy rock, we have covers, called three-chord covers. We have freeform jazz or fusion. That's so freeform, it doesn't really get a name. But we structure the sessions, communicate, brand them so that people know coming in, okay, this is going to be about modern country, even to that degree. Or this is going to be about just how many distortion pedals can we use and how much rock can we get out of it. So by setting up the character and offering, some variety, people sign up for their favorite. And they do experiment. They'll jump over and see, well, what's going on, especially if there are a couple sessions going on at the same time. And they appeal to different levels of capability, right? So we specifically designed our three-chord Thursdays to be, as many songs as we can that only have three chords. And there's tons of them, as we know. And then, of course, you can throw in an extra in a bridge or something like that. But that's not only easy and fun for beginning, even intermediate players. The advanced players love it because you can jump onto a different instrument and play it. I've jumped off a bass and picked up a guitar. I mean, you would think playing music for so long I would know how to play guitar, but I really like the bass.
Right.
But I can do a C, a G, and a D, I can play along. So that's how we create these sessions and set an expectation. And then other sessions like our freeform jazz fusion improvisation that'll attract people who are super comfortable, can play by ear.
Yeah.
No charts on the wall, nothing. Just the drummer might start a groove and everybody creates something. The bass player could start a groove. Anybody in the room could start something.
Yeah.
And vocalists too. We get a lot of vocalists that come in and explore everything from scat to they bring in poetry and sing it or other lyrics from other songs to whatever's happening in there. So, we have those different flavors you can order.
Can people come watch?
Yes, we have a social membership that our musician members can come anytime. We're open. We open at 10 a.m., close at 11 p.m. The social members can come in after 5. Again, same. They can sit in studios. We have couches in the studios. Doors are open.
Because like the jazz one, like I just think that would be amazing to just watch. Like I wouldn't know I wouldn't feel comfortable stepping on that stage one bit, but it would be so cool to just sit and see what other people do in scenes that aren't mine.
Yeah, you might be surprised. You said you play what, violin?
Piano, and I sing.
Piano.
Yeah.
Yeah, piano and singing is it is a magical experience because you don't have to. You're not singing to a chart. You're just making stuff up. There's a lot of just scat, and it is and same thing with the piano. It is fun to listen to when when I don't participate in those, it's one of my favorite things to listen to, just the amazing things that happen. So yeah, there's that, call it, we used to call it the audience. I don't think that's as accurate,
Right.
because people do come and more just socialize. Those kinds of members, they just can't. No, they're just not musicians. And everybody
Well,
loves an audience.
you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation that you may not get to participate as much, but it does sound like you do participate. What do you personally, what's your relationship with your business almost on the customer side? What do you get out of Sound Union?
Uh, I not just playing music. Um, I'll say in running this business and seeing it now, helping it grow, managing. Now it's more about a team helping it grow. I mean, this stopped being my idea, uh, a while back. As soon as people started becoming members and I started hiring staff, it's just made its own. We've curated it, but
Hmm.
I get out of. I do. I'm still, again. It's a funny frustration, but I embrace the frustration of, again, the bartender doesn't get a drink
Right, right.
because you want people to enjoy themselves. And I'm an outward, for the most part, I'm an outward person. I think that's another thing that makes us as a business unique. We've found people to staff. Tom and I are both, especially again coming out of the ad business, you have to be an outwardly focused person, not an inwardly
Mhm.
focused one. So it's fun. I do get a ton of enjoyment seeing people come in and play. I absolutely fires me up when I see the evolution of a shy person who comes in looking for a place to play and looking for a community to join. And months later, they walk through the door, and because they're a regular in whatever kind of session, they're like, "Oh my God, Morgan's here!" And it is absolutely, it changes changes my life to see that.
Yeah,
I'm lucky
that's
in
what
that.
your dream was.
Yeah, yeah, it really is part of that, and lucky to get to have a business that does that. Um, Especially after decades of building other people's brands and selling widgets and consumer tech and high tech. It's fun to see the effect that this kind of club has on folks. That more than I would say the music, honestly, at this point drives me.
Amazing. So set the scene for me. I walk into Sound Union. What's going on? What do I see?
You walk in, you see a really cool space immediately. You pull out your iPhone if the concierge is going to look at you and say, "Hi, Morgan, good to see you again." And if you have a reservation, they're going to say, "You're in Studio 3 in a few minutes. What do you need? Can I get you a drink? Can I carry your instrument for you?" Sign in is seamless. We have members sign in and out, just so we know kind of what our capacity is and things like that. But you experience, it'd be like walking into, I hope, the lobby of like a 5-star hotel. It's everybody knows your name. We know why you're here. We know what you like. Um, you immediately see other people that you know and have built relationships with. And you have a little time, most likely, before you step into the studio. Step up to the bar. We have snacks, and evenings we'll have treats, and somebody behind the bar pouring you something. Socialization, figuring out, all right, what's going to happen tonight? What are we going to do when we go into 3-chord Thursdays? And the session leader will be in that mix, and the studios are all set up for you. You didn't have to bring anything. As a keyboardist, we have several keyboards, so you may want to say, "Hey, can I get the Nord Stage 4 in there
Hmm.
tonight?" And tech concierge, absolutely. And even if you're not joining a regular session and you have signed up to bring friends in to play, or you're going to come in for a personal, you know, um, recording or rehearsal session, we will know that. As you reserve, our members say, "Look, I need a mic, I need a keyboard, I need, X, Y, and Z." That's all ready for you. So all you have to do is walk in the room and sit down in a super comfy studio, and start playing. Take breaks whenever you want. We have nice, clean bathrooms, which is another unique thing. My experience of music spaces. Some nights you'll come in and there'll be a performance going on upstairs. Some of our when our we have 3 studios and we have a stage, and many times during the month they're all those are booked. People want to rehearse their stage performance before they go and play at a club or play at some of the small venues around here. So we have a sound engineer always on staff to help people set up and help the bands work out whatever they need on stage using our equipment. It's all set up all the time. Well, add mics and things like that, but the amps and the backline is all there. So we make it kind of easy. On some days you can walk in, you may not want to play music, but you need a space to work. And we have a really cool co-work space with, sort of an open co-work space. And you take your coffee breaks in the studio. So we're really trying to create that experience of just come, relax, pursue music, hide if you want, for a little while, get some work done, maybe,
Yeah.
no judgment.
And if I'm walking into Sound Union, are there what are some things that you notice that so actually let's flip this around. When you walk into Sound Union, what do you notice?
I cannot answer that on recording device. I am when it comes to this, I'm a bit of a perfectionist.
You are a perfectionist. I knew it was in there somewhere.
I see all the things we need to improve. Yeah, absolutely. And I immediately tell myself, all right, sandwich that. There's some good stuff. Then that, and then end with the good stuff.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I always have one last question. I ask every guest this. Do you know what the word zeitgeist means?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So you can look at it broadly in broad cultural terms or in kind of microcultural terms, which I have anthropology training as my degree in college, anthropology and music. So I have this phrase I've coined, zeitgeist moment, when in the context of this podcast, it's musical. It doesn't have to be, but basically that moment where you're making music, listening to music, whatever, and you just something just clicks and you're part of something bigger than yourself. So I will ask you, what is either a recent or a memorable zeitgeist moment for you? And while you're thinking about it, I'll share one. I was thinking in preparation for this conversation, I was just thinking about community and where in my life I've experienced the most, the strongest sense of community. Obviously in music, there's so much. But I think that the space that has held the most community for me in my life is the lobby of my music department in college, which is kind of how I have not been to Sound Union, but I'm kind of picturing that in the same sense where I just have I have memories of walking in, and you've got my friend Andrew on bass playing haikus, just like noodling around. We've got Ben over there playing flamenco, and they're like going back and forth. You've got all the choir people waiting for rehearsal. Maybe a little corner over on the side of people trying out some barbershop or whatever. You've got people talking about history or whatever it was that they were learning about that inspired them. And just the feeling of walking into that lobby before we all went off to our respective ensemble practice. That's why I actually wasn't a music major, but that kept me coming back and coming. Eventually I was like, well, I have the credits, so I might as well get the degree, because I just couldn't let go of that feeling and walking into that lobby and seeing all these amazing people and being part of them and being, seeing, it was just really incredible for me, that sense of connection. Regardless of what type of music we were playing, we all kind of knew what we were there for. And that was a really special sense of connection for me. So I would love to hear from you. What was a recent or a memorable zeitgeist moment for you?
That's a wonderful example. and I won't, but I can go on about how my experience at UCLA as a psychobiology major, but playing music had a very similar kind of thing. I didn't end up building a degree in music, but that space did inspire. That moment is part of the inspiration of here. I had a very, very similar experience. And it was kind of like the last really clean, cool place to play music because once you graduate,
yeah.
yeah. I would say I did have a moment recently. We had an opportunity to celebrate the life of someone in the gaming industry who'd passed away suddenly. And one of his dearest friends is a member, and had asked, "Can we have?" He really loved music. He loved the band, and this guy's in a super great. I mean, he's in a number of bands, but really great player. And he said, and he really liked this band that I was in, and I'd like to bring the band back together and have a celebration of life for this guy. And it was everything rolled into one. The emotion of connection, because it was a super. This guy just had a. I didn't know him, but clearly, we had 200 people here. 150, 175, maybe 200 is a little stretch, 175 or so, but it's still, they were all like, you could tell, deeply connected to this man. And that music was the thing that became, there was a concert after the memorial, the reflections and the food and also, and it connected people even more so, which you almost couldn't imagine. And it was like, that was one of, I would say so far, the best use of this space. It rolled everything together: human connection, love of music, catharsis of music, the joy of music. I was standing on the wall with one of my partners, and we had that look of like, oh my God, this is more than we ever imagined. Yeah.
Amazing. That's beautiful. Well, John, thank you so much for being on my podcast.
Thank you for having me on again. I love the story. I love the approach that you have. And it was a complete pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Zeitgeist Radio. And thanks to John Avilla for joining me. All of his links are in the episode description. Please check him out and give Sound Union a follow. Please follow me too at Zeitgeist Academy on Facebook and Instagram. I also have a YouTube channel that is just this podcast, but it is another place you can follow me. And don't hesitate to reach out with a Zeitgeist moment of your own. I always love to hear from fellow music lovers. Thanks for listening.